Good morning. So I'm probably going to be doing like a video where I kind of go through the scriptures a little bit more. But I'm just driving to work here and thinking, what can I say to these people to get them to wake up? So coming up pretty soon is the Christian Church's second most favourite pagan blending abomination holiday, Easter, derived from the goddess named Ishtar, in which these heathen nations, that when God gave Israel the land, and he specifically told them, these heathen nations that are currently dwelling in the land, who I'm going to send you into and, have you take over that land. Israel were going to conquer the land, however you want to put it. All of these heathen nations who are currently dwelling in the land, do not go into their land and ask them how they serve and worship their gods, and then worship me that same way. He did not want his people to do that. And of course, throughout Scripture, God never warns in vain. If there's a warning in Scripture, it's because people are going to do it. Okay, just like Jeremiah 10. Don't go into the forest and cut a tree down and bring it inside and stand it upright and decorate it with silver and gold and sacrifice your children unto it. Don't do that. And of course, what did they do? And now what did the Christian Church continue to do? That exact thing. That exact really, really specific thing is exactly what they do, and yet they somehow still try and defend it. Even though Job says, who can take a clean thing out of an unclean thing? Not one. Not one. Okay? The only person who was ever able to cleanse something that was previously unclean was Jehovah, when through the refreshing of the covenant, aka the gospel, he was able to cleanse the Gentiles. Okay? But that's God. Okay? Nowhere in Scripture did God say, actually, now it is okay to go into a forest and cut a tree down and stand it upright and decorate it with silver and gold and sacrifice your children to it. He never said that. So it remains unclean. And so it remains a sin against Jehovah for you to do Christmas. And Easter is the exact same. Okay? Now I believe, is it Ezekiel? No, it's Jeremiah 44, Ezekiel 7 and 8, I think. And there's a couple of other places. But all you need to look at with Easter is, just look at the egg, the eggs. Just that part of it alone. Okay? That is a very easy thing to learn about. Okay? Now, what Easter represented was a fertility ritual. Okay, so all these heathen nations would have these huge orgies in order to impregnate all of their women, so that 9 months later, at Christmas time, ready for Saturnalia, all the women would be giving birth to these babies who they would then immediately sacrifice to Moloch, or to whatever god they were sacrificing to that year, or in that nation, in that civilization, whatever, because that's the thing. People always turn around and say, oh, that's not talking about Christmas in Jeremiah 10, that's talking about Saturnalia, or whatever it would be called. And it's like, how foolish do you think Satan is? He's not going to just keep it the same throughout all time. Satan changes he twists the lie a little bit every sort of generation, just to keep people thinking that it's fine. Okay, so yeah, Jeremiah 10 is talking about an Asherah pole, but an Asherah pole and a Christmas tree represent the exact same thing. So there's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. And it's the same with Easter. Okay? So they would have this big fertility ritual. They would impregnate all of their women so that 9 months later, they were ready to be sacrificed. Okay, that's why you have the egg as part of Easter. It represents new life, fertility. Okay, and Ishtar, which is literally where we get the word Easter from, Ishtar was the goddess of fertility. Okay, and then when they would have all of these eggs, and they would paint the eggs with the blood of the children that they were sacrificing. So now, as I've explained many times before, these physical things that we see in Scripture are oftentimes represented now by the spiritual side of things. Okay? So these people, however many thousands of years ago, were actually physically sacrificing their children. Well, now you are spiritually sacrificing your children. And that's why you're so deceived into doing it, because you think it's just a bit of fun. You think it's just a game. But you have no idea that you're actually spiritually sacrificing your own children. Okay? And it's so obvious. Look at the state of our children in this generation. Just look at them. Like, the kids in this generation are just ruined. They don't stand a chance. They do not stand a chance. And that's your fault. Okay? And it's my fault as well. We're all to blame. We were all supposed to be obeying God together, and we were all supposed to be teaching each other how to obey God. But no one's been doing it. Okay? Look at Hosea. The start of Hosea 4. It's like you sin and you sin and you sin, and nobody corrects each other, so blood touches blood. And that's where we're at now. And that's why 2 times a year, 3 times a year, even when you chuck in Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, just all of these like days, especially the ones that have ties to religious, like a religious background, they are all traditions of men that Jehovah does not want you to do. And it should be so obvious. Like, where in the Bible does it say to do Easter? I know you've got that scripture that actually says Easter, but when you look in the Strongs, it should say it's Pesach, it's Passover. Okay? Like, God hates your traditions of men. He doesn't want you to do them. The only reason you do them is because you've been conditioned by this end days society to just do them. The amount of people that I've spoken to at work, especially men, okay? Especially men. There's such a huge appeal to the women in these traditions of men, because it's like they get to like dress the house up all pretty, and they get to, do this, and they get to do that, and it's all just materialistic bollocks. But so many men are just like, I don't really care, I just go along with it, for the family, for the wife, for the kids. And it's like, you men, especially you men in the church, if you know that it's just a pointless, irrelevant thing to do, and that God has no desire in it, then stop doing it. Tell your family, no, we're not going to do this. We are not going to do this vain tradition. How about instead we actually serve God? How about instead of being obedient to the traditions of men, you become obedient to the holy covenants of promise, and you become obedient to the royal law? That's what you were supposed to do. That's what God actually wanted you to do. But instead, you've just been running around doing the most pointless, vain, bullshit things you could ever imagine. So, there you go.